their death was painless?
Um,
How does a writer capture that moment of last seconds?
It's very difficult for me to know what she was aware of at that time, because at that time in her life she no longer recognized her children or her grandchildren, and she wasn't always pleasant to be around, because sometimes people with this sort of disorder, the masks come off and the superego is gone, and
I see.
and so it's almost like dealing with a person that you've never known at times.
I see.
On the other hand, at some level, everyone assures us that they do know that we're there. And so I would like to have been there myself. And so I don't know pain. It's hard to know what she would have been aware of at the time.
I see.
That's what I was trying to capture, was the fact that my mother had severe osteoporosis, so that her back was curved into almost a C shape, so that later, because she was in her 90s, so later in her life, she was actually stooped into this kind of C. So I was trying to capture this body trying to unclench itself.
Unclench itself, yeah.
That's what I imagined as she passed, finally relaxing or trying to unclench.
I see. Well, I must really thank you for sharing this with us, and for sharing this with our viewers. It is both a description of the human condition, the death of a particular person at a particular time, in a particular uncomfortable situation, which literature is trying to capture for eternity. I personally think it's a very well done and successful piece, and I've become transformed by it as a reader, and I hope my viewers feel the same way also. And now, I think I've done enough reading of your works at your expense, so we'll move now to you to choose some of your best works from the few pieces published and unpublished that you've brought for me, and lead us to see how they are produced. Let us spend some time discussing the interiors of writing. What does a writer do when he's writing a piece? Give us a crash course on this.
So should I talk about a specific piece?
Yes, I think so, as intensely as you can.
Okay,
I don't think we have very much time left, probably about 20 minutes or so.
Okay, well, I have a little piece here. It's quite a bit longer than the ones that you were reading, so it doesn't lend itself to being read all out.
All right.
But as is the case with many things that I write, or I think that anyone writes, it grows out of experience. But it's an experience that gets changed as I try to write it down. So as a young man, and I was always fascinated with traveling. I traveled a lot. As soon as I got my driver's license, I started taking, and I had a car at my disposal, I started taking long trips whenever I had a chance between school sessions and traveling all over the Midwest and South of the United States. Among other things, I was intrigued by Route 66, and I drove down Route 66 out towards Los Angeles, and I have some very powerful memories of passing through Amarillo, Texas, and this would have been in the mid to late 1960s, of driving through Amarillo, Texas on the old Highway 66.
Okay, perhaps you can single out a paragraph that will navigate.
Okay, so that's
make me see it.
That's where the story starts.
Okay.
So that we're in Texas, in Amarillo, which is a highway town, and it's the story of an insurance salesman who's there because he needs to settle some claims with his clients. And as he comes into town and he looks about, and he goes into a cafe, into a diner to get something to eat, just a little diner by the side of the road, and the waitress intrigues him. So over the course of the next week or 10 days, he keeps coming back to the same cafe to meet the waitress, and finally proposes to her, and they move off. They go off to get married at the end of the story. So
I see.
So the beginning of the story is his arrival in Amarillo. So, shall I read some of this?
Yes, that would be
All
wonderful.
right, you'll have to tell me where to stop.
Okay.
All right. This is called The Courtship of Elvira. Perry Parker met his wife in a cafe on Motel Row in Amarillo, Texas in 1955. She was serving eggs, sausage, grits, and flapjacks at one of the diners among the motel's that lined both sides of Route 66. When he crossed the city limits coming into town, he saw the carcasses of failed businesses, parking lots going to weeds along the cracks, and tall, over-the-road trailers dripping rust and misery onto flat tires. The buildings were in better repair as he approached the center of town. Toward the middle of the strip were 3 or 4 chain motels with swimming pools and tablecloth restaurants. Perry was passing through Amarillo on his way to see flash flood victims about a property claim. He wasn't looking forward to explaining the insurance company distinction between a personal tragedy and an act of God. What the hell difference is there, he thought, between having your possessions ruined by water leaking through the roof during a thunderstorm or by flood runoff that rises out of an arroyo and pours pell-mell through the living room? He sat down in the cafe at a booth next to the window, sinking into a depression in the vinyl cushion. Elvira came over, plopped a small glass of water on the table, pulled a napkin from the dispenser, and placed fork, knife, and spoon on it. "You need a menu?" she asked. "I'll have 3 eggs scrambled, 6 slices of bacon, toast, coffee, and a large orange juice." Elvira wrote 3 words on her pad, then shouted at the cook, "Half rasher and OJ." She turned back to Perry. "You take cream?" "Yes, ma'am." "What's a full rasher?" "Half dozen eggs and a half pound of bacon. You don't live around here, do you?" As Elvira walked away, Perry noticed she was in her early 30s, a little under-endowed above and over-endowed below the waist. She wore a thin white shirt, a faded red skirt, and scuffed saddle shoes. Her blonde hair was set in tight curls. He imagined her jumping and doing the splits at a high school football game, flushed and pretty in her oversized sweater. "Pick up, Peachums. Get a move on," cried the cook. "On my way." When she got to the counter, she hissed, "Don't call me that." "That's your name." "Is not. My name's Elvira." "Well, pardon me, Miss Elvira, ma'am. Cart these eggs over to that gent before they get cold. Call me by my name. You move your ass a little faster around here and I'll call you whatever you want, Peachums." Perry smiled sympathetically when Elvira came to his table.
Okay, perhaps we could stop here. It must have taken you, what, to be able to condense this encounter?
Well,
that gives me a vision of the street, a vision of the highway, and most spectacularly, your sense for dialogues. In my craft as a writer, my weakest point is the inability to write good dialogues. Dialogues are very hard to write, but it seems that they come very easily to you.
Well, I don't know about easily, but this story starts from the image that I recalled from driving through Amarillo on that highway, and the kind of depressing motels and what I saw there. So
did you hang out at the restaurant?